The air crackled with tension as the planet Argon 9 orbited perilously close to its massive sun. Among the violet sands, flickers of energy spiked as two figures, a human named Maya and a local alien, Zarn, raced through the desolate landscape, dodging flashes of hostile plasma fire. Maya's ship, her only hope of escape, was miles away, and her oxygen reserves were dwindling. Zarn, with his chameleon-like skin shimmering in the twilight, grunted as he took the lead. His species, the Zoryks, had once ruled Argon 9, but now they were on the brink of extinction, pushed to the edge by the ruthless Argon Corporation from Earth, which had recently discovered a rare mineral that could fuel warp travel for centuries. The corporation's drone patrols scanned the sands, hunting down any Zoryks who dared fight back. They ducked behind a jagged rock formation as a drone squad whizzed by, leaving a trail of dust and shrieking alarms. Maya's jaw clenched. "How many of them are there?" she whispered, gripping her laser pistol. "Too many," Zarn replied, his voice hoarse. "But there's a hidden outpost near the Valley of Shadows. My people are regrouping. It's our last stand." His eyes narrowed. "Why help us, human? Aren't we just resources to your kind?" "I'm not here for them," Maya retorted. "I came to document this planet's cultures, but the corporation had other plans. Now, all I want is to survive, and get you off this rock before they erase every trace of you." They sprinted again, weaving through rocky outcrops, as the rumbling sound of an approaching assault cruiser grew louder. Maya's fingers danced over her wrist pad, struggling to intercept the enemy's frequency. The corporation had recently upgraded their technology, making it nearly impossible to jam their communications. Almost as if they had anticipated resistance. Just as they crested a ridge, an energy barrier sprang up in front of them. Beyond it lay a ravine filled with flowing, molten crystals, a mesmerizing yet lethal landscape. Maya looked at Zarn, and he nodded. With one shot from his wrist blaster, a small device on his belt lit up, and the barrier fizzled out. Suddenly, the ground trembled as three mechanized Corp soldiers dropped from the sky, landing with a metallic thud. Their armored exoskeletons glistened under the sun, and one raised his rifle, red targeting beams locking onto Maya and Zarn. "Unauthorized personnel detected. Immediate termination protocol engaged," the machine's voice droned. Maya's heart pounded. She fired her laser pistol, but the energy beams bounced off the soldiers' shields, barely scratching the surface. Zarn's weapon discharged in a bright blue arc, melting the ground beneath the soldiers' feet, causing one to lose balance and stumble into the molten crystal ravine. The machine flailed as it dissolved, its screams distorted and haunting. Zarn turned to Maya. "That was one. We need to keep moving." But the other two soldiers advanced, weapons blazing. Maya ducked behind a boulder, narrowly avoiding a blast that seared the air beside her. Zarn growled, charging headlong at the nearest soldier, his claws extending as he tore through the joint of its armor. Sparks flew, and the soldier staggered before collapsing. The final soldier activated its emergency beacon, a bright flare shooting into the sky. Reinforcements were on their way. Maya's face drained of color as she saw the incoming dots on her wrist pad, indicating a dozen more soldiers inbound. "This is a suicide mission," she gasped. "Then let it be a worthy death," Zarn replied, eyes burning with defiance. "Better to die fighting than to be forgotten." Maya's mind raced. The corporation would not stop until they had the minerals, and total control. But if she could reach her ship, she could transmit a distress signal to her old crew and expose the corporation's cruelty to the galaxy. "Zarn, we're not dying here. Follow me." She sprinted toward the ravine's edge, then pulled out a small disc and hurled it toward the molten crystals. The disc emitted a loud hum, stabilizing the crystal's chaotic energy, creating a temporary bridge of hardened plasma. Zarn's eyes widened. "You humans and your gadgets. He grinned, leaping after her. They raced across the bridge as the corporation's reinforcements descended. The soldiers lined up along the ravine's edge, firing relentlessly. Bolts of energy zipped past, one narrowly grazing Maya's arm, searing her flesh. She stumbled but kept moving, pain forgotten in the surge of adrenaline. As they reached the other side, Maya tapped her wrist pad, activating the disk's self-destruct. The bridge dissolved, and a massive explosion of crystal shards erupted, forming a deadly barrier between them and the soldiers. They fled through a winding series of tunnels that led them to a large, hidden cavern where a group of Zoryk warriors waited, their weapons and expressions grim. Zarn addressed his kin. This human risked her life to help us. If she can reach her ship, she may summon others who will help our cause. One of the warriors scoffed. Humans only come to take. Why should we trust her? Maya stepped forward. Because I'm here to make sure your story is told. To expose the corporation's crimes and give you a fighting chance. After a tense pause, the warrior nodded. Then let us prepare. The corporation will come for us all soon. They armed themselves, preparing for a final standoff. Maya sent the distress signal from the depths of the cavern, praying it would reach her crew in time. As the sounds of approaching Corp troops echoed through the tunnels, she and Zarn took their positions, ready to face whatever came next. The fight was brutal, and the cavern shook from the onslaught. One by one, the Zoryk warriors fell, but they took many of the Corp's soldiers with them. Just as the remaining Corp forces cornered Maya and Zarn, a roar filled the air. Her ship, summoned by her distress signal, appeared overhead, blasting the enemies with a powerful laser, scattering the Corp's soldiers. As Maya and Zarn scrambled aboard, she looked back at the battlefield, at the fallen warriors who had sacrificed everything. Zarn placed a clawed hand on her shoulder, his gaze fierce and determined. We fight on. We remember. As they soared away from Argon 9, Maya vowed to make sure the universe would know the truth, of the Zoryks, of the Corp's atrocities, and of the resistance that had begun on that unforgiving, violet sand. The ship sped away from the hostile terrain of Argon 9, piercing the thick atmosphere with a shudder. Maya and Zarn collapsed onto the cold metal floor of the cargo bay, breathing heavily. She could feel the weight of the fight they'd just endured pressing down on her, but there was little time to rest. Set course for the nearest neutral zone, Maya commanded through the intercom, addressing the ship's autopilot. She looked at Zarn, who was inspecting a wound on his arm, the greenish blood of his species seeping slowly. We're not safe yet. The corporation's forces reach far and wide. Zarn nodded, his chameleon skin shifting colors to indicate pain, his gaze distant. They'll keep coming, Maya. They'll hunt us to the edge of the galaxy if that's what it takes. She felt the sting of his words, knowing full well the truth in them. The Argon Corporation wasn't just after resources, they wanted domination, control over entire species and planets. And anyone who stood in their way was a threat to be eliminated. After patching up their wounds, Maya took him to the ship's cockpit, a small but efficient hub filled with blinking lights and holographic maps. She showed him the route they'd be taking. We're headed to the Rim Confederation, she explained. It's a collection of independent planets that aren't under corporate jurisdiction. If we're lucky, we can rally more allies there and share what we've seen. Zarn examined the map with a grim expression. Even if we find allies, Maya, the Corp has a way of silencing any resistance. My people have fought for decades, and each time, the Corp has come back stronger. That's exactly why they need to hear this, she insisted. I have footage of everything, the drones, the mining camps, the soldiers. If we get this out to the public, even the Corp won't be able to ignore the backlash. Just then, an alarm blared, and the holographic screen flickered with a warning. A Corp destroyer had entered their vicinity, closing in fast. They're on to us already. Maya cursed, gripping the control wheel as she steered them into a dense asteroid field nearby. Hold on to something. The ship lurched as she navigated through the labyrinth of spinning rocks. The Corp destroyer followed, sending waves of plasma blasts that turned asteroids into bursts of molten debris. Maya pushed the thrusters to their limit, weaving through the dense field, but the destroyer was relentless. "They're gaining," Zarn warned, bracing himself as the ship shook violently. Maya's mind raced. There was only one way out, but it was risky. "There's a warp gate at the edge of this field. If we can reach it and activate it, we might be able to lose them." "They'll be expecting that," Zarn said, his tone flat. "They know these routes too. Then we'll make it harder for them." She pulled a lever, and the ship released a trail of explosive charges into the asteroid field behind them. The charges detonated, creating a massive chain reaction that sent chunks of rock flying in every direction. The Corp destroyer was forced to veer off course, its shields flaring as it took heavy hits from the debris. The warp gate loomed ahead, a massive ring floating in space with swirling blue energy in its center. But as they approached, Maya noticed another ship was blocking the path, a Corp blockade. "We're trapped," she muttered, her fingers tightening on the controls. "But we're not giving up." Zarn's eyes glinted with determination. "Then let us fight as if our lives depend on it." "Because they do." Maya aimed the ship directly at the blockade, activating every weapon at her disposal. Lasers, plasma torpedoes, and EMP bursts fired in rapid succession. The Corp ship returned fire, but their weapons weren't calibrated to handle such a frantic assault. Just as they were about to collide, Maya activated the warp drive. The ship lurched forward, hurtling into the blue vortex of the gate, leaving the blockade and the destroyer behind in the wake of her surprise attack. The ship tumbled through the warp tunnel, colors swirling around them, until they emerged on the other side, surrounded by the stars of the Rim Confederation sector. Maya exhaled, relief washing over her as she checked the scanners. They were safe, for now. But the sense of security was short-lived. The Rim Confederation wasn't exactly a sanctuary. It was a chaotic zone full of warlords, smugglers, and rogue factions who operated under their own code. Convincing anyone to help them would be a challenge. But Maya knew they didn't have a choice. As they landed on a remote space station, Maya glanced at Zarn. "We have to be careful. These people don't trust outsiders. If we're going to rally them, we need to show them that the Corp is a threat to everyone." Zarn nodded, his skin shifting to a cautious gray. "Then let's give them something they can't ignore." Inside the station, the air was thick with tension. Figures of every imaginable species moved through the dimly lit corridors, some giving Maya and Zarn suspicious looks. They found a cantina near the center, filled with smugglers, mercenaries, and freedom fighters, all drinking and discussing the latest Corp transgressions. Maya pulled out a holographic projector, activating it in the middle of the cantina. Images of the Corp's mining camps on Argon 9 flickered to life, showing the devastation, the mistreatment of the Zoryks, the destruction of their land. The patrons stopped, their gazes fixed on the projection. A large, scarred alien approached them, his eyes filled with anger. "What is this?" Maya looked him in the eyes. "This is what the Argon Corporation is doing to worlds like Argon 9. And it won't stop there." The alien's fists clenched, his voice low and dangerous. "My people were forced from our homes by the Corp. We fought, but they had the resources, the weapons. We barely escaped with our lives." Maya took a deep breath. "Then join us. Help us spread this message, and maybe, together, we can end the corporation's control once and for all." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Some were skeptical, but others nodded, fists clenched in solidarity. The tension thickened as more aliens and mercenaries gathered around, whispering to one another, discussing the possibility of resistance. Just as Maya thought she'd won them over, the station's alarms blared. A voice echoed through the corridors, "Attention! Argon Corporation forces have breached the perimeter. All unauthorized individuals will be detained." Panic erupted in the cantina, but Maya and Zarn held their ground. She looked around, her voice rising above the chaos. "This is our chance to fight back. If we let them control us here, we'll never be free." The scarred alien nodded, his eyes alight with resolve. "We fight with you." As Corp soldiers stormed the station, Maya and Zarn took up positions with their new allies, the makeshift army ready for battle. Plasma bolts fired, explosions rocked the corridors, and the fight for freedom began in earnest. Through the smoke and chaos, Maya felt a flicker of hope. It was a long, uncertain road ahead, but in that moment, united in resistance, they had become more than survivors. They had become a force, one that the Argon Corporation would never see coming. The battle inside the space station was like nothing Maya had ever experienced. Plasma fire lit up the dim corridors, throwing shadows across walls scarred by decades of conflict. Aliens, mercenaries, and smugglers, all who had once fought only for themselves, now fought together, pushing back the Corp soldiers who flooded the station. Zarn moved with deadly precision, his claws slashing through armor as he defended Maya's side. "Fall back to the control center." Maya shouted, recognizing that their only hope was to secure a defensible position. The makeshift militia formed a protective line, retreating through the smoke-filled corridors. They finally reached the control center, a room filled with blinking consoles and reinforced walls. Maya quickly sealed the doors behind them, buying them precious time. As the others took up defensive positions, Maya worked on the central console, her fingers moving in a blur across the alien interface. She accessed the station's security systems, bringing up live feeds of the Corp soldiers flooding the station. "They're cutting off all escape routes," Maya said, her voice grim. "They're trying to trap us here." The scarred alien who had first rallied with them, a hulking figure named Drek, grunted. "Then we make this station their grave." Zarn leaned over Maya, studying the screen. "What's the plan, human?" She took a breath, thinking fast. "We need a way to get reinforcements here. There are dozens of mercenary groups and resistance cells across the rim, but they're scattered. If we can send a signal strong enough, they might rally to us." Drek crossed his arms, doubtful. "Sending a signal that powerful will lead the Corp right to every resistance cell in this sector. They'll come down on us like a plague. Or it could bring enough firepower to finally turn the tide," Maya countered, glancing at Zarn. "It's a risk, but it's one we have to take. If we don't act now, the Corp will crush us one by one. This is our chance to make a stand that the galaxy won't ignore." Zarn nodded, his determination mirrored in his vibrant eyes. "Do it." Maya accessed the comm systems, rerouting power to amplify the signal. She prepared a broadcast, displaying the images and footage of the Corp's atrocities on Argith, 9 and other planets in their brutal campaign for dominance. She spoke directly into the comm, her voice carrying the weight of everything she had witnessed. "This is Maya Asher, former cultural envoy and now a fugitive of the Argon Corporation's regime. We are on the rim, fighting for our lives against a force that will stop at nothing to control every free world. To any resistance cells, to any who value freedom, join us. The Corp has exploited, enslaved, and erased our worlds for too long. Stand with us, and let's show them that the galaxy won't bow to their tyranny." She sent the signal, and within moments, it began broadcasting across the entire Rim Confederation sector. If anyone was out there, they would hear her call. As she finished, the control center shook with an explosion. The Corp soldiers had breached the outer defenses and were closing in fast. Drek grabbed his weapon, snarling. Guess we're about to find out if anyone heard that call. The doors to the control center burst open, and the Corp forces flooded in. The defenders opened fire, unleashing everything they had. The room filled with the blinding flashes of plasma blasts, the sounds of metal clashing, and the guttural cries of those fighting for survival. Maya and Zarn fought side by side, their movements perfectly synchronized. Every time a soldier closed in on Maya, Zarn was there to fend them off, and every time Zarn seemed overwhelmed, Maya covered him with her laser pistol. Drek and his mercenaries fought with raw ferocity, holding the line as Corp's soldiers advanced with unrelenting precision. Just as their defenses began to crumble, Maya's comm crackled to life with an incoming transmission. "This is Captain Voss of the Starborn Legion. We received your signal, Asher, and we're inbound. Hold your position." Maya's heart leaped with hope. "Reinforcements are on the way," she shouted to the defenders, who responded with renewed determination. Within moments, the roar of incoming ships shook the station. Through the control center's viewport, Maya saw dozens of ships emerging from warp space, mercenary fighters, independent freighters, and even a few warships marked with the symbols of the Rim's notorious resistance groups. The Corp forces inside the station hesitated, realizing they were outnumbered. Just as they regrouped, explosions erupted outside as the resistance fleet attacked the Corp blockade. Space lit up with the fire of battle as resistance ships tore through the Corp fleet, overwhelming them with sheer numbers and ferocity. Inside the station, the Corp soldiers began to fall back, realizing their impending defeat. Maya, Zarn, and the others pushed forward, driving the invaders out of the control center and back into the corridors. The tide had turned. As the last Corp soldier fell, Maya and Zarn stood amidst the rubble, panting and bruised but victorious. Cheers erupted among the defenders, and Drek clapped Maya on the back, his gruff face split by a fierce grin. "You did it, Asher," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "You got the whole sector to stand with us." Maya managed a weary smile. "It's just the beginning, Drek. The Corp won't stop here. This was one battle, but there's a whole galaxy that still needs to see the truth." Captain Voss, leader of the Starborn Legion, approached her, his face grim but resolute. "The Corp won't let this stand. They'll send everything they have to wipe us out now. We need to be ready for the war that's coming." Zarn stepped forward, his eyes fierce. "Then let them come. For every world they conquer, we'll make them pay tenfold. They've taken everything from my people. Now we take the fight to them." The defenders nodded, their faces a mixture of determination and defiance. Together, they had formed a coalition, an alliance of unlikely allies united by their hatred of the corporation and their desire for freedom. As word of the victory spread across the sector, more ships and fighters arrived, pledging their allegiance to the cause. Maya looked out of the viewport, seeing the stars beyond, each one a world under threat by the corporation's ambition. The path ahead was uncertain, and the cost of freedom would be high. But for the first time, she felt hope that the galaxy could be free, that they could stand against the darkness and emerge victorious. As the resistance fleet gathered, preparing for the battles to come, Maya and Zarn stood side by side, knowing that together, they would face whatever the future held. And in that moment, as they gazed into the vastness of space, they understood that the fight for freedom was only just beginning.